So I'm working on some brackets here, getting them ready to weld onto some tubing. So that one in the upper left, that one is ready. The ones on the right side, on the bottom, those are the right size, but I still have to bevel those for the weld. And the bottom left, that one is the wrong size altogether. And so I got to open that one up and also put the bevel into it. So I'm doing this all with a grinder. And normally I hate doing this kind of work in a building because of the sparks and the fire hazard and the mess that it makes. But it's pretty windy and cold outside right now, so I'm kind of gonna break my own rule there, and I'm just gonna do it right here. So that's what I'm after. So one of them is welded now, and this is a piece of 1¼ inch DOM tubing here. This thing is still hot. You can hear my welder running in the background. And this one needs to be welded yet, so you can see how I beveled those tabs so that the weld can get in there nice. So that makes a nice strong joint. And so I also put a piece of heavy paper in there. It's almost like cardboard. I used that as a spacer. So I'm going to assemble this one. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm using one of my shocks that's going to be on the machine. I'm using it as a jig, and I got some duct tape on there because I don't want to get the spatter on the finish. So this is how I'm assembling it. So I use a piece of cardboard, and I use that as a spacer because I figure it's always good to leave a little bit extra room for paint and assembly and stuff. I don't like to have like the brackets like really tight when I'm trying to put stuff together. So then it gets a spacer on there, and this on there, and another spacer, and the other bracket. So I'm not going to make that nut really tight. I don't want to compress that cardboard, just to get a basic fit here. And then my piece of DOM tubing can find a nice home there with those brackets. And then it's ready to weld up. So I've got the shocks in place right now, according to the geometry that I came up with here. So these pieces here now, they're literally bolted to the cardboard, and I've got a kind of a bracket there on the back side. So you can see this piece, it comes through now, so I could actually start bending more DOM tubing and weld it to the frame and get that all set up. So here's a shot from the front of the machine, but looking towards the back. You can see the rear shocks. You can see the top of the shocks. They kind of almost tuck in behind the cage there nicely, and I like the way that turned out like that. So I've been thinking about this, what I'm going to do with this here at the front end. You see how the shocks, they're kind of like, they've got like a near vertical stance. They're actually spread out quite a ways. So the fix would be to either go with a shorter shock, and that would force the geometry to move the shock mount inwards, and it would also be down. And the other solution is to move the bottom shock position on the lower A-arm, if I would have that moved towards the wheel more, then that would also force the top of the shock in and down. So it's more of an angle like that is what I'm after. This is a little bit kind of, you know, I don't know if I really too keen on that type of an angle on those shocks, but like I say, it would be functional. So the geometry tells me where that shock has to be mounted, and I can't just make this stuff up. Let's say, for example, I just leave that bottom shock mount where it is, and I leave the same length shock on it, and I decide, okay, well, you know what, I'm just going to put the top shock mount where I want, and I don't care about the geometry. I think, well, I'm going to just put it over here, you know, just kind of make it up. And then what would happen in that type of a situation, then when the wheel is in a bottomed out position, then the shock body, it wouldn't nearly use all of its travel. So that this shock body might end up maybe only till here, you know, leaving all of this here. So then the shock pressure on the inside, it can't get nearly as high as where it wants to be, because this shock has no spring in it, so it's got nitrogen pressure. So when I talk about spring rate, I'm talking about the nitrogen pressure building on the inside of the shock, and it wouldn't get nearly to where it needs to be for a near bottom out situation. So with all of this left, you know, I can't properly make use of the spring rate. So that's why that shock has to be matched up to the geometry. So anyways, it's either a shorter shock, or move the bottom shock mount, or leave it the way it is and just weld it up and run it. So those are the options that I'm looking at right now. I was thinking about this a little bit at work, how I'm going to tackle this. That's where I'm at right now. Guys, I appreciate you checking in.